She had an American passport, an American voice, American dreams, and she used all three to help Adolf Hitler break the spirit of American soldiers fighting to survive. But here's the part that will genuinely disturb you. Some historians believe the United States government got this story badly, dangerously wrong. Her name was Mildred Gillars, but the soldiers huddled in trenches across occupied Europe, freezing, exhausted, terrified, knew her by a different name, Axis Sally or Bitch of Berlin. She didn't cross no man's land. She didn't fire a single bullet. But in a war where morale was everything, the Nazi regime handed her something more powerful than a rifle, a microphone, and she used it every single night. She was not a spy recruited in the shadows. She was not a trained agent. She was a girl from Portland, Maine. You who just wanted to be famous. She got famous, just not in any way she could have imagined. And what she did, and what was done to her, is one of the most layered, most uncomfortable stories that World War II ever produced. If this is your first time here, please subscribe to support the channel. Mildred was born on November 29, 1900 in Portland, Maine. Her father was an alcoholic. Her parents divorced when she was young. Her mother remarried, and life got harder, not easier. But from the very beginning, Mildred had one obsession: the spotlight. She enrolled at Ohio Wesleyan University, studying dramatic arts. She was gifted, genuinely gifted, the kind of person who could command a room the second she walked in. She was eccentric, expressive, and burning with ambition. She dropped out in 1922. The dream stayed, but the opportunity didn't. By 1934, she had drifted to Europe, teaching English in Germany, living on almost nothing, chasing a version of herself that kept moving just out of reach. That's the first thing to understand about Mildred Gillars. She was not an ideologue. She was not a true believer who woke up one morning wanting to serve the Third Reich. She was a woman who had been failing for a decade, and she was desperate for someone to believe in her. That desperation was the door Hitler walked through. His name was Max Otto Koischwitz. He had been her professor at Hunter College in New York, brilliant, magnetic, and already deeply committed to Nazi ideology. By the time Mildred found him again in Germany, he had become a senior official at Reich Radio, one of the most powerful propaganda machines in the world. He was also married, with children. But here is the reality that most documentaries skip past. Koischwitz was not just her lover, he was her handler. He spotted a talented, vulnerable American woman, and he pulled her into the machine deliberately. She told the court, "I loved him and was willing to die for him." His defense team used that exact statement to argue she was under hypnotic influence, that she was manipulated, not motivated. The prosecution called it an excuse. The truth? It was probably both, and that is where this story gets genuinely complicated. By 1940, Mildred was fully inside the Reich Radio operation. She hosted multiple shows: Home Sweet Home, Midge at the Mic, GI's Letterbox. The format was devastatingly clever. She opened with big band jazz, swing music. You're the kind of sound that made a homesick soldier close his eyes and see his kitchen back in Ohio. Then, between songs, she twisted the knife. Your wife is lonely tonight. The men who didn't ship out are keeping her company. She questioned whether Roosevelt was lying to them. She told them they were dying for British and Jewish interests, not American ones. She told them surrender wasn't cowardice, it was survival. Now here is a fact that almost no one mentions, and it is genuinely jaw-dropping. It didn't work. Not in the way the Nazis hoped. American Corporal Edward Van Dyne said in 1944, quote, "Dr. Goebbels no doubt believes that Sally is rapidly undermining the morale of the American doughboy. I think the effect is directly opposite. We get an enormous bang out of her. We love her." Soldiers listened for the music. They laughed at the propaganda. They mocked it. So here is the question that needs to be asked out loud. If her broadcasts were largely ineffective, and soldiers themselves said so, then what exactly was the crime? We'll come back to that. But there is one part of what Mildred did that has no grey area whatsoever, no ambiguity, no debate. She walked into POW camps and hospitals, and she told American soldiers she was with the International Red Cross. She was not. She convinced those men, wounded, captured, far from home, to record voice messages for their families. She told them it was just to let their mothers know they were alive. Then she took those recordings back to the studio, and she edited them. She spliced in pro-Nazi content. She made American boys sound like they were sympathetic to the regime that had imprisoned them. Then she broadcast those altered recordings into American living rooms. This is not propaganda. This is psychological manipulation of the cruelest, most personal kind. You are using a son's voice, the voice a mother has been praying to hear, as a weapon. May 11th, 1944, 26 days before D-Day. Mildred Gillars went on air and performed a radio drama unlike anything the war had produced. It was called Vision of Invasion. She played an American mother from Ohio. In the broadcast, she has a nightmare. She sees her son on a ship crossing the English Channel. The Germans destroy the vessel. He dies. He visits her in the dream as a ghost, his body broken. In the background, screaming. Real, human screaming. A voice declared, "The D of D-Day stands for doom, disaster, death, defeat, Dunkirk or Dieppe." It was broadcast directly to British-based Allied troops preparing for Normandy, men who were already carrying the weight of knowing what they were about to do. The Nazis genuinely believed this broadcast would cause mass desertion, that thousands of soldiers would refuse to board those ships. They did not. On June 6, 1944, the largest amphibious invasion in human history crossed the English Channel anyway. But Vision of Invasion, this single radio drama, became the sole count on which Mildred Gillars was convicted of treason. She was acquitted of 7 other counts. Let that land for a second. Out of everything she did, every broadcast, every manipulated recording, every lie she told in a POW camp, the one thing that convicted her was a radio play that didn't even work. Now for the part of this story that is genuinely hard to look at. In 1944, the same year she broadcast Vision of Invasion, Max Otto Keuschwitz died of tuberculosis and heart failure. He left her, not with a goodbye, not with a plan. He just died, in the middle of a losing war, and Mildred was suddenly alone in Berlin with no citizenship, no protection, and no one left who believed in her talent. And she kept broadcasting. She kept that microphone on until May 6th, 1945, 2 days before Germany surrendered. Was that loyalty to a dead man? Was it fear of what would happen if she stopped? We don't fully know, but what we know is this. By the time the war ended, Mildred Gillars had been abandoned by every single person or system she had ever trusted. Her father, her stepfather, the dream of stardom, Keuschwitz. Oh, and finally, the regime she had served for 5 years. She was 44 years old, alone in the rubble of a defeated city, and American soldiers were coming for her. When the war ended, Mildred didn't run. She didn't escape to Argentina like other Nazi collaborators who had done far worse. American counterintelligence agents found her living in the bombed-out cellars of Berlin. She was arrested on March 15, 1946, nearly a full year after Germany surrendered. She spent 2 years in Allied detention, waiting. Then she was flown back to the United States on August 21, 1948, the country she had left behind and had spent 5 years helping to destroy. The irony is almost unbearable. The woman who had tried to shatter American morale was now being brought back on American transport to face American justice under American law. January the 25th, 1949, Washington, D.C., the trial of Mildred Gillars, the first woman in American history charged with treason, began. She walked into that courtroom in a grey dress, hair neat, expression calm. She did not look like the monster the prosecution described. She looked like someone's school teacher. Her defense argued she was coerced, that she genuinely feared being sent to a concentration camp if she refused to broadcast, that she was under Keuschwitz's psychological control, that her oath of allegiance to Hitler was signed under duress. She took the stand herself and wept. She told the jury she loved America, that she never wanted to hurt American soldiers, that she was a woman trapped by love and circumstance. The prosecution played vision of invasion. The jury deliberated. Out of 10 counts of treason, when they convicted her on exactly 1, that tells you something important. The jury did not see a cold, calculated ideologue. They saw a complicated, damaged woman who had done one thing that crossed a line no court could ignore. March 10th, 1949. She was sentenced to 10 to 30 years in federal prison, fined $10,000, equivalent to approximately $130,000 in today's dollars after inflation adjustment, and permanently stripped of her U.S. citizenship. The judge himself acknowledged she had not attended high-level Nazi policy conferences, meaning she was not in the room where the actual decisions were made. She was a performer, a tool. Some historians argue she deserved every year. Others, journalists who have studied the trial transcripts, argue that the conviction was partly symbolic, that America needed someone to punish, that the woman who had embarrassed the nation on the radio was a cleaner, more satisfying target than the military officials who had actually failed to protect those soldiers in the first place. There is no clean answer here. That is why this story is still being discussed. She served 12 years. She was paroled in 1961 at 60 years old. She moved to Columbus, Ohio, and she got a job teaching music to kindergartners at a school run by the Sisters of the Poor Child Jesus. The woman who had filled the airwaves with death and psychological manipulation spent her final years teaching small children how to sing. She never gave a major interview. She never publicly apologized. She never explained herself to the world she had hurt. On June 25th, 1988, Mildred Gillars died at the age of 87. No surviving family was found. A private funeral was held. No cameras, no reporters, no final broadcast. The voice that had reached millions across a burning continent went out in complete silence. Here is what Darkroom Archive wants you to walk away knowing. Mildred Gillars was not the most brutal figure of World War II. She never commanded a camp. She never signed a death order. But she made a series of choices. Small ones at first, then larger, then enormous, each one harder to undo than the last. She chose a man over her country. She chose ambition over conscience. She chose to stay when she could have stopped, and then she chose to use the most human tool there is, a voice, music, emotion, a mother's nightmare, to serve a machine built on human suffering. Was the punishment proportional? Was the trial truly fair? Did the system that convicted her also carry some of the responsibility for the world that created her? Those are questions worth asking, but they do not erase what she did. She knew those soldiers were real. She knew their families were real. She knew what she was saying into that microphone, and she said it anyway, every single night, for 5 years. That is its own kind of horror, and that is exactly why we don't let history forget her name. Share this video with someone who thinks World War II history is just battles and generals. The real story is always more complicated. If you like this information, which we share with you, please hit the subscribe button to support the channel. I will see you in next video.